It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com. That's randykabc@gmail.com. Today we're going to Carlsbad, one of the most beautiful places in Southern California, right in between San Diego and Orange County. Carlsbad has a new ordinance that's going to be affecting a lot of people who live there because the city of Carlsbad has decided that if you live in a multifamily home, whether that's an apartment, whether that's a condo, whether that's a townhouse, because you're in such close proximity to your neighbors, they don't want you smoking. They don't want you smoking cigarettes. They don't want you smoking cigars. They don't even want you smoking marijuana. And this ordinance is going to be self-enforced, which means it's not going to be law enforcement that tells you to put the joint out. It's going to be your neighbor. Let's find out what exactly is going on here on CBS 8 in the San Diego area with the Carlsbad smoking ordinance.
Less than 6 months, smoking of any kind will not be allowed inside and outside of apartments just like these in Carlsbad, but it won't be up to law enforcement to enforce this law. It'll actually be up to the landlord and other tenants if they choose to take legal action against violators.
Oh, you can sue somebody for smoking? Oh boy, is this going to be uncomfortable and ugly. Now, I got to say, I used to be an apartment dweller many years ago. I moved in 2007 and I moved out in 2014. So for 7 years, I lived in a studio apartment in Valley Village. Big love to the double V's. And starting in 2008, I took up quite the habit of smoking pot. And the occasional trying a cigar and the occasional trying a pack of cigarettes. But for the most part, it was pot. In fact, in the years 2009 through 2012, 2013, I was recording a whole bunch of podcasts in my studio apartment, including one hosted by my good buddy Adam Macadocious. Does he still call himself that? Adam Ill. And there was a podcast, the first of its kind. And let me just tell you, my apartment stunk to high heaven. And if there was anybody above me or next to me that had a problem with it, I'm sure they were bothered constantly. The only incidents I can really remember are a few times the apartment manager who lived about 2 doors down, this lovely woman, Angela, she would knock on the door and we're just ripping bongs like crazy, going left and right, doing nail hits. The place was grotesque. I don't know how I did all that. I mean, coughed up a lung every single time. They used to call me the Valley Village Cough. But she would knock on the door. This happened maybe twice, and she'd say, "Randy, it smells." And now let me just tell you, as a former pot smoker, when you are as into weed as I was, you don't smell it because it's everywhere. You don't even think about it. But as soon as you stop smoking, I haven't smoked for about 7.5 years, I smell it everywhere. I notice it. I can tell when people are doing it when they're not supposed to, although it's California, I guess you could do it anywhere. But I can see how certain people would have an issue with this if you happen to live in an apartment building. But this is the question. This is the dichotomy that we face. I don't usually like to use that word because I think it's what stupid people use to sound smart, but we'll use it today. Because on one hand, you should have the freedom to do whatever you want in your apartment, in your condo, in your townhome. On the other hand, the thing that you're free to do stinks real bad, and then it could, the smoke can seep in, that can do actual damage. So I don't know where we go with this. How do you feel about this ordinance in Carlsbad banning smoking of all kinds in apartments? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Let's start with Ray in El Segundo. Ray, hello.
Hi. What if you wanted to smoke some brisket or fish? Could you do that?
I got to imagine you can, because anybody that is smoking a brisket indoors has no idea what they're doing.
But that'd be especially cruel because that smells really good.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. You know, the smell of cigars, the smell of pot, that's all terrible. But imagine if you were wafting the gorgeous smell of a 18-hour brisket through the air vents in your apartment building. You'd have a whole bunch of knocks on the doors, but it wouldn't be complaints. It would be people with forks saying, "When is it ready?"
Exactly.
Ray, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. Is it okay? Is it American to ban smoking in apartment buildings? Let's go back to the report from CBS 8.
I could care less what other people do.
I think it makes sense. Smoke inside stains, whether it's cigarette smoke or weed or what have you.
And you can still smoke outside in the porch. It depends, if you have a private space to do it. One of the actually leading reasons that got me to quit smoking, it was the dumbest thing, because it had been time. I happen to personally believe that once you turn 30, the pot turns on you, and those highs, they're not nearly as good as they used to be, and you start to get into the anxious territory and the paranoid territory. And every time I would smoke, I'd be like, why did I do that? Oh, I don't like this anymore. But it takes a long time to admit that. And there were also other things, like my wife. Every single time I would smoke, she'd make me, she said, you got to go get the mouthwash. You got to brush your teeth. I'm not kissing that mouth. And she was right about that. But we moved from a house in Burbank to a townhome in Reseda. And the townhome only had a front porch, and it was facing the street, facing Sherman Way. I'm like, I don't know if I feel comfortable doing this right on the street. And you know what? As soon as we moved there, I never touched the stuff. I was real irritable for 3 weeks, but then it was just done. Then I got all these compliments at work about how much smarter I was sounding. And, never looked back. But you know what? I understand that if people want to do that, they don't want to have to do it outside. Especially if you're like me, and every time you smoke pot, you cough up a lung.
Smoke inside stains, whether it's cigarette smoke or weed or what have you.
It's a strange law.
Carlsbad City Council.
I wonder, that apartment that I stunk up for 7 years, I wonder what the house cleaners thought when they were getting that ready for a new tenant. Did that smell linger?
It's a strange law.
I got to imagine, whenever you're clearing out and cleaning out for a new tenant, a place that a single guy in his 20s lived for a decade, ooh, that's a special smell.
It's a strange law.
Carlsbad City Council approved the ordinance at the end of July. It will apply to apartments, condos, and other multi-unit homes. The law will not just apply to smoking inside and outside of units. It will also ban smoking on private balconies, porches, decks, patios, and common areas unless designated as a smoking area.
Okay, so you can't even smoke on your balcony. You can't smoke on your porch, only in a specific smoking section, which might be awkward if you're bringing a 6-foot bong to. Someone once gave me a gorgeous 2-foot bong, and I broke it after the first smoke. Because I'm a klutz.
The ordinance is intended to reduce disabilities and even deaths caused by secondhand and thirdhand smoke.
Prop 64 allows for you to be able to consume cannabis inside your own home. So if you're renting, that's your home.
Jackie Bryan is a cannabis journalist at San Diego Magazine. She says this is bad news for Carlsbad renters.
So advocates argue that it's discrimination against renters and people who don't own their own property.
Okay, I don't know about that. I mean, it says you can't smoke the cannabis, but there are many other ways to ingest the cannabis. You can get your munchies, you can get your brownies, you can get your can of butter, you can get your tincture. Those you could consume all you want, and it's not going to bother your neighbors. But how do you land on this? How do you feel about banning smoking of all kinds in multi-unit homes, in apartment buildings, condos, and townhouses? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Kevin in Irvine. Kevin, hello.
Randy, hey, how are you?
Doing great.
You have a great show. So glad you're on the air. My opinion on this, when you have somebody who smokes in a condo or an apartment, that smoke gets everywhere. Just like if you had your radio on at midnight super loud, it affects everyone with ears in the area. Anyone with a nose that can smell smoke, pot, whatever, it goes through the walls, the vents. It's terrible. I live in a place I had to shut all my windows all the time because my neighbors smoked like a chimney, and I just felt like I was a prisoner in my own home. I couldn't open the windows and get fresh air. It was terrible.
And that's impacting your freedom to breathe clean air and to not have to be bothered by the constant stink.
It really does. And your place starts to smell like it. It's bad all over. So there's plenty of places to go walk and have a cigarette if you want to smoke. But at this point, who's smoking anyways? It's just going to kill you. Might as well stop.
At nicotine, it's addictive, my friend. Kevin, thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. Love this audience. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. 1-800-222-5222. Do you think it's okay to ban smoking of all kinds in apartment buildings, in condos, in townhouses? That's what a new ordinance in Carlsbad is going to do. Are you for it? Are you against it? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Frank in Glendale. Frank, hello.
Hey, hello. Hey, Randy. Yeah, I agree with the ban. I think these potheads, everywhere I go, I smell this pot, and it's so pungent. It's not like back in the day when I would smoke it, and, I've quit for 20 years, but the cigarettes, too, I think they should ban it. I totally agree with it.
I will agree with you there. Even in just since I started smoking in 2007, it smells so much stronger than it used to, and it is not pleasant.
And you do smell it everywhere. I mean, I walk down the street. I'm driving down the street. I know people are driving and smoking when I smell it on the highway. It's just everywhere.
Yeah. I as somebody who did that a lot in my 20s, and I shouldn't have because it wasn't even legal then, I had ash stains on the ceiling of my car. My car probably stunk worse than my apartment.
I know back then we were probably, wishing for following that group Normal or reading High Times and wishing the day would come. And you're right, though, around 30, 32, you just reach a point where you're like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, totally agree. It turns on you and like, this isn't fun anymore. Frank, thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. I don't know what it was, but I've heard that from so many people. And there's some people that keep going, but yeah, it was no longer fun for me. It took me probably a year to realize it and to be like, okay, this isn't fun anymore. This also does not help me sleep. But how do you feel about banning smoking of all kinds, pot, cigarettes, cigars, in apartment buildings, in condos, and townhouses? That's what Carlsbad is doing. 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. The city of Carlsbad is banning smoking of all kinds, cigarettes, cigars, even marijuana in apartment buildings, in condos, and townhomes, even on the balconies, anywhere that's not a specific smoking section. It's supposed to be self-enforced by tenants and landlords that can sue you if you're smoking. How do you feel about this ordinance? Should we be banning smoking of all kinds in apartment buildings? Well, people should be free to do whatever they want. These are shared spaces and shared walls. So kind of split on this one. Let's go to Ken in Covina. Ken, hello. Ken? I'm just Ken? Ken can call back. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. Let's go to a different Ken. Ken in Inglewood. Ken, hello.
There we go. Ken in Inglewood. Look, you can't change the rules halfway through the game. I moved into this place. I was allowed to smoke when I got here, and now you're going to change the rules on me, especially in a condo where I actually own the property. Doesn't seem reasonable to me.
That's a really good point. Ken, that's a really good point. It's one thing if you want to make that the rule for new tenants, but if you bought that place, if you signed the lease with the impression that this is what you want to do and this is how you have been doing it, how dare they?
And Kevin says go take a walk. Well, half these cities are banning smoking in public. So I got to
one's
move
gonna
to
be able to
Vegas to
smoke
live in
anymore.
America now?
Oh boy, can I tell you, Ken? I was in Vegas. This must have been a year after COVID, and I saw somebody who was so into smoking that they had a COVID mask because it was still going on, and they had a cigarette sticking out of the side of it, and they would pull down the mask to exhale the smoke.
Yeah, that sounds like it's going to work out well. So the other thing is the enforcement mechanism you're talking about here sounds like just prime candidate for Karens. Everybody who loves giving somebody a hard time about not wearing a mask is going to be all up in somebody's business about the smoking, whether they smell it or not.
Well, that's the funniest thing. It's like it's one thing if the city wants to do this and the city wants to enforce it, but the city wants to put out a mandate and then have the citizens themselves enforce it, which means the busybodies are going to be very busy.
Yeah, they don't have enough to do. Now, it's one thing. Look, you own an apartment building. You want to set up rules before somebody moves in. You know, it's your building. You can do what you want. If I own the property, I mean, this is why I'll never live in a place with an HOA because they already seem like they're heading too close to North Korea for me as it is. But if I own the property, leave me alone or make up the rules before I get there. Thank you.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Ken, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Katie in Costa Mesa. Katie, hello.
Hi. So I dealt with the same thing, except my neighbor smoked. We hated it. We didn't complain. Another neighbor did. And he's banned from smoking anywhere on the property. He thinks we did it. So now every 30, 40 minutes, he goes out to smoke. And he makes it very loud and very known that he's going out to smoke and punishes us by slamming his door or saying something crude and just being a real nice guy. And it's almost more of an inconvenience having to listen to him go in and out of his door than it was to smell the smoke and have him think we're the ones that complained when we didn't. But anyway.
That has got to be so
you got to deal with him coming in and out to smoke, too. Yeah.
You probably smell it on him as he's walking back. But, you know, this is the problem that with the way this specific ordinance is written, it is going to cause so many disturbances between tenants like the one that you're going on. And you had nothing to do with this.
Nothing to do with it. And I swear, I mean, he does all kinds of stuff now thinking it's us.
Oh, boy. Well, Katie,
and
thanks
even
so
though
much
we
for
told him
sharing.
it wasn't. But anyway, it's going to be a bunch of fun watching the news and seeing what comes of it.
Yeah, maybe we'll get some viral videos out of it. Katie, thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. Oh, my goodness. Let's go to Phil in Carson. Phil, hello.
Yeah, that's a bunch of hooey. I own a condo. I rent it out. When I first rented it out, we had smoking. The HOA gave me a ration about it. I told them to stick it. Now they also want to ban fire pits and barbecues. Where does it end?
now you've got my attention. Don't you dare take away my barbecue.
Because that's what they want to do. They said, oh, it bothers the other neighbors. It bothers the other tenants. As which I told them, let them put a filter in. This is my, like Ken said, this is my property. I can do with it what I want. If you don't like it, move. Don't set the rules.
Who in the world?
You can. Go ahead.
Oh, who in the world, Phil, is going to be bothered by the smell of a barbecue, of grilling meats, of grilling vegetables? That's one of the best smells on the planet.
The two vegetarians that live in the front of the units.
Well, they're just jealous.
Well, either way, but I've told their renters also, and I told them, if you don't like it, there's other places you can move to. I'm not enforcing the no smoking in my unit. They got in there smoking.
Phil.
There you are.
Thanks so much for the call, Phil. Appreciate it. Lot of really interesting opinions on this one on both sides. It's one of these issues where you don't really think about how you weigh on it till it affects you. But that's what we're doing here. We're taking your phone calls, maybe getting to the end of this wrap, but definitely taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. The city of Carlsbad has an ordinance going into effect at the end of the year. It would ban smoking of all kinds, cigarettes, cigars, hookah, bongs, rippers, bubblers, pipes, joints, marijuana, tobacco, everything. Maybe even clove cigarettes. Are you okay with that kind of ban in multifamily units, in condos, apartments, and townhouses? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222, and emailing at randykabc@gmail.com. That's randykabc@gmail.com. The city of Carlsbad has passed an ordinance that takes effect in 6 months that would ban smoking of all kinds in apartment buildings, condos, and townhouses, multifamily units. How do you feel about this? The lines are lit up. Let's get right back to the phones. Let's start with Patty in Simi Valley. Patty, hello.
Hey, Randy, how you doing there? It's not going to work, Randy, because it's silly, Randy. It's stupid, and it's not going to work. And who's going to enforce this, Randy? Who's going to enforce this?
Oh, the tenants themselves get to enforce it.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about that, Randy. Let's talk about that. So our system is not set up for that. There is no mechanism for a tenant to enforce it. If a tenant was going to enforce this, they would have to go. They can't go to small claims, so they have to go to the circuit court. They have to go hire a law firm to develop a lawsuit and then request a date in front of a judge. That will cost them $20,000. No one's going to do that, Randy. People can't afford to buy a box of cornflakes. So this is going nowhere.
Unless they really, really, really hate smoking, then they might do it.
I think so, right? I think so. Thank you, Randy.
Thanks so much for the call, Patty. Appreciate it. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. Let's go to Carlsbad. Scott in Carlsbad. Hello.
Hi, this is Scott in Carlsbad. And I imagine that there's 4 districts in Carlsbad, and I imagine there's 3 of them that came up with this. And the apartment density is in District 1, so I suspect it was 2, 3, and 4, which is single-family homes. But I kind of understand why they did it. I mean, I know people that are heavy-duty smokers, serious heavy-duty smokers that live in single-family homes, and they don't even smoke in their own home anymore. So, but it does seem a little ham-fisted. I'm on the fence, too. But the 3 districts in Carlsbad, I think they've made an art form out of crapping on District 1 where the apartments are. So that's I think if you're smoking cigarettes, I can't even address the pot thing, but if you're smoking cigarettes, you gotta think about the other guy. You gotta try
to be considerate if anyone's bothered by it. Do we need to have a whole ordinance about it? Well, we're going to see how this takes effect. But yeah, I'm on the fence as well. But that's very interesting perspective that most of the people that would be affected by this are in one district and the other ones voted on it.
Yeah, and there's like filters, air filters and things like that. And there's ways that you can get around it. And, I come from the days when we used to smoke in the office, and now I'm in a company of 200 people, and there's maybe one or two guys out of 200 that even smoke anymore. They didn't get the memo, I guess. Because it stinks. One of the reasons it stinks is because of what they put in the tobacco too, the insecticide and stuff like that. They keep changing and changing. And I noticed, like in the 80s, that they started smelling really weird. So they don't smell good anymore. Even then, but. Yeah, there's ways.
Well, unless you're addicted to it, then they smell like the greatest thing you've ever scented in your life.
Yeah, nose blind is what it's called.
Scott, thank you so much for the call. We appreciate it. All the way down in Carlsbad. The signal might go that far, but maybe he was listening online. But we're happy to have everybody listening and calling into this show because I love this. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. Where do you fall on the ban of smoking of all kinds in multi-unit buildings, apartments, condos, townhouses in Carlsbad? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Tom in L.A. Tom, hello.
Yeah, hi, Randy. I am a plumber, and I can go to an apartment complex or something, and if there's somebody smoking that stuff, it's not too pleasant for the little kids running around in the in the courtyard. As far as cigarettes are concerned, I don't think it's a big. I don't think that is ham-fisted. But with the marijuana, it's two different things. And when I was listening to you and John this afternoon, and when John said, to me, it smells like a skunk, I just put my fist in the air and said, yeah, that's exactly the way I feel.
My house got skunked a couple of years ago, and the first thing I thought was, did somebody just spark a joint in my backyard?
Well, I went into a customer's house one time, and they said that we've got something. We've got this bad smell. So I go back to the bathroom. I could kind of smell something. I said, "Oh, these people, they're pot smokers." And then I said, "Well, it'll go away. It'll go away." And then they gave me a call again, and so went under there, and sure enough, there was a family of skunks under there. So, anyhow, that's it. And I mean, as far as passing the buck to the citizen, reminds me of when I was in aerospace 30 years ago, and there was this guy who sat around and didn't do anything. He's reading the paper, and then management wanted, they came to the regular warehouse clerks to, hey, you want to write up this guy? Well, that's not my job. No, it's not. You know what I mean? It's just passing the buck, and if you're going to pass a law, then it's not up to the citizens to enforce it. It's just dumb.
Yeah, that part really is weird to me.
It's it's an odd. It's weird. Yeah, it's not easy to go and enforce things. It's just That's why you have the law. To enforce a law, you have the police force and so forth, and it just doesn't make any sense. Nobody's going to do it. It's just. You don't want the confrontation. It's ridiculous. No, it's just anyway. That's it. I mean, it's just the smell of the marijuana. It's like two different animals: cigarette smoke and I don't know what you can do if you're smoking in your own house and that you're paying rent for. The walls are pretty sealed. If you maybe just open the windows, and I don't know, but people complain, and it's just a. Yeah, like the other caller said, if everybody just quit smoking. I smoked for 5 years when I was a kid, up to a pack and a half a day. And thank God I quit when I was 20. I started when I was 15 and just quit. And that was that. Except when I had a little bit too many of the amber liquid. And then, I think I've probably smoked in the last 50, 60 years 4 or 5 packs of cigarettes, which isn't bad for all that time. So.
That's pretty darn good, Tom. Congratulations. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. I never really got into cigarette smoking. A couple of times when I was working at Magic Mountain and I was 16 years old, a couple of the older employees, because everyone who was working at the fast food, it was an excuse to take an extra break. Like, you only got 2 breaks if you were a non-smoker. But if you were a smoker, you needed a cigarette break. You go over and over and over again. And there was one guy, he'd share a cigarette or two with me. And I was like, I don't like this, but I feel cool. And I never really got into it, got into pot. But in my rave days, which I just thought about the other day because of that noise complaint story from Hard Summer, which I've been to that about 12 years ago. In the rave days, you needed to have cigarettes, specifically menthol cigarettes. If you get Camel Crushes, that was the best because, I don't know, when you're high on ecstasy, nothing feels better than menthol. I don't know what that was about, but I am glad I am past that part of my life. Anyway, let's go to Rocco in Santa Clarita. Rocco, hello.
Hey, Randy, thanks for taking my call. Now, I've just got a real short one to say. You're going to have a bunch of Karens out there. Do we really want hundreds of Karens in complexes? And they've already got enough problems dealing with homeowners associations and condo owners associations. We want a bunch of Karens out there? Really? A bunch of more tin horn Karens? That's all I've got. What do you think?
I have a feeling that this ordinance is going to start a lot of fights the way it is written. Rocco, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Carlsbad is banning smoking of all kinds, pot, cigarettes, cigars in multifamily units, townhouses, condos, and apartments. How do you feel about this? 800-222-KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. If you'd like to email us, you could do so at randykabc@gmail.com. Lane writes in and says, kids, animals, the elderly, and other vulnerable people are deeply affected by smoke. If people try to pull the grandfathered in card, they can cover all medical expenses, time missed from work, and funeral expenses. Look, this is why this is kind of an on-the-fence issue because, yeah, smoke is bad for you. And smoke, if the person next door is smoking, that can seep through. And that is, you could feel trapped if it really is bothering you. You happen to have asthma or something. And then there's the whole pot thing. Let's go to Irene in Sunland. Irene, hello.
Yes, hi. Yeah, well, we all have a right to breathe clean, fresh air, or clean air at least, and no cigarette or chemicals. And regarding barbecues, it's the charcoal with that cancer-causing lighter fluid, unless they have better charcoal these days, I'm not sure. But the thing is, people, like if you go to Griffith Park, I mean, man, if you were like jogging, you'd be breathing all that. They have all these charcoal barbecues with the lighter fluid, very dangerous, very harmful to your health. Those should be banned. And if they're in apartments, definitely should not be accepted. Gas barbecues, propane, those are safe, and they smell the good of the barbecue. It smells good, and it doesn't cause any health problems. And then if cigarettes in the apartments or whatever, they're all connected. Why don't they have smoking tenants on that side and then non-smoking on this side? Not one right downstairs from you or upstairs from you or next to you. It goes through the walls. It goes through the outlets. And working with the smoking years ago, it was horrible. And I was it was cubicles, and it's like, but they wanted, they said, no, that person, they could smoke. They've been here a while. And I was young. I was going to be an underwriter. I quit I wouldn't work because I can't work with that. It makes you sick. And
I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to be in offices back then when everyone was smoking. Because, yeah, I would give me a headache. Irene, thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. Yes, we should go back to smoking sections like we used to have on airplanes. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. If you'd like to email us, you could do so at randykabc@gmail.com. Susan writes in and says, hey, Randy, we live in a house and have neighbors, renters, who 3 at a time vape the nastiest smelling flavored juice. One of the flavors smells like lemon-scented poop. One of the tenants, a kid home from college, vapes constantly. So pungent, so pervasive, so nasty smelling. Yeah, that would bother me too. Let's get back to the phones and go to one of our favorites, Bill in La Cañada. Bill, hello.
Hi, Randy. It all depends on what the definition of smoking is. Everyone knows that when I used marijuana, I never inhaled.
Yeah. Former President Clinton, no one's buying that, and no one bought it 30 years ago. Thank you so much for the call. Look at that. Yeah, that was a pretty decent Clinton. I like John's too. And then, I used to work with Brian Whitman. He does a fantastic Clinton, but don't know that many people are doing that impression anymore. How relevant is Bill Clinton? Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, it's such a pleasure to bring this show for you every day. I didn't even get through the 2-minute wrap because we had so many great calls. So I'm still split on this because I totally understand the plight of the people that don't want to deal with the smoke. But, if this is your thing, if that's what you need to do to keep it going. And as my buddy Tim Conway used to say, if that cigarette's the thing that stops you from punching a hole in the wall, well, then it does have its benefits. But that's what we do here, a little lively debate on an issue that affects everybody. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you missed any episode of this show, you can download the podcast, highly subscribe. You got to subscribe. Go to kabc.com/newsblitz or search for the News Blitz with Randy Wang anywhere you get podcasts. And I'll see you tomorrow at 5 for another News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.